Well, brand valuation has gone from a dark art to something of a science. The value of South Africa's top 50 brands has grown considerably over the past year. The Brand Finance Survey measures the financial brand value of South African companies that operate in and out of the borders of this country. Which brand tops Africa's tip? This is Tonight. I'm Bruce Whitfield, and tonight I'm joined by Thebe Ikalafeng, the chairman of Brand Finance Africa. We talk about brand values. I don't care about brand value. I care about market capitalization and share price. Why does brand value matter, Thebe?
Oh, brand value matter because brand value blends the two important parts. It blends the customer part of building a brand, and of course the financial valuation on the balance sheet. So in the past, many of us, we speak to accountants only. They will just tell you what the physical assets are. But if you talk to marketers and if you look at the stock price, you'll see that there's the physical assets, and then there's that other premium.
Called goodwill.
That's called goodwill. When you put it all together, you get your brand value.
Okay, but how then do you measure the intangible that is the goodwill, that is the value of a brand? I know that I'm a big fan of Nando's. I know that Nando's has a strong brand. Don't ask me what the Nando's brand is worth, but I can tell you how much chicken they sold, and I can tell you how much tax they're alleged to have dodged in the United Kingdom. But I can't tell you what the value of their brand is. How would you go about valuing the brand of Nando's?
You do two things. One, you go speak to the consumers and try and get from the consumer perspective the brands that they admire and the brands which they value. Then the second most important thing we should do, which is really the primary part of the financial part of the valuation, is we use what we call the royalty relief methodology, which in simple terms really means that we try and estimate that percentage or that royalty that you would charge if you were to license out your brand. And we take that royalty and we look at the revenues of the brand, and we give you a net present value and says that's what it will cost if you had to sell your brand today.
Now, if you say South Africa's most valuable brand, you're going to tell me it's Nelson Mandela, right?
Nelson Mandela is certainly the most important brand in South Africa.
But not the most valuable.
He is the most valued, perhaps you say the most valued brand in South Africa, but you perhaps could also say the most valuable. But what Mandela does is we cannot pawn or sell Nelson Mandela, but what the brand Mandela has done in the last 20 years of South Africa is to create, if you will, that enabling environment for South Africa to attract investment, to attract tourism, as well as to enable South Africans to love South Africa. And now if you look at the impact of that, is brand South Africa itself has grown by 116% in 5 years, from 120 or so billion to 270 in 5 years. We remain the number one dominant brand in South Africa, perhaps in Africa.
But that's what's so difficult about this brand valuation exercise, because Michael Jackson is worth more dead than alive. When he died, he was practically bankrupt and was going on his world tour. He was preparing for his This Is It tour. We now discover, dead 5 years later, he's worth nearly $600 million, courtesy of royalties to his estate. Nelson Mandela, incredible lack of tangible value, not value that you can measure in rands and cents, but his brand value is ever present in South Africa. And that's the great difficulty around the credibility, is it not, of brand valuations?
Well, not really. I think what you're referring to about Michael Jackson, you're referring to the value, not necessarily the brand value.
No, I'm talking about the real cash value,
the real cash
the
value
one you can measure.
And by the way, these surveys have been done, a lot of these evaluations have been done of dead celebrities, and they found that dead celebrities sometimes even outsell living celebrities, because there's a tendency to say, I just want to have a piece of me forever. And then organizations, companies like record companies, for example, have learned the art of how to recycle dead people. They take the old music, which is supposed to be old, and just repackage it and sell it again.
With Nelson Mandela, for example, South Africa's most valued brand, we run the risk of denuding the value of that brand if we do not treat it with the respect and the sanctity with which it should be treated.
And that's why what's important is to try and understand what are the attributes of that values, so that we are so we are able to measure and to measure that brand consistently over time. Yes, of course, any brand that does not get measured will not be able to be valued.
In South Africa, we have lots of companies that have done amazing things over the last 20 years. We've seen great innovation start up in South Africa. We've seen the move north, not only through the African continent, but we've seen South South African companies globalize as well. The most valuable brand in South Africa should hardly be surprising. It comes in as a cell phone company, but it's not Vodacom, it's MTN, probably the most Pan-African of any South African company.
Well, MTN has done incredible in that I think they've grown by 31% over last year. It is the benchmark brand. I think they've had a lot of, they've had a couple of things on their side. The one biggest thing they've had is the sponsorship of the World Cup. What they did, it also created the admiration of the brand across the continent, but also the visibility of the brand across the world. As you know, it's the only African brand that is in many of the top 100 global brands, and it doesn't even operate outside of South Africa, outside of Africa and the Middle East, if you will. And MTN far outpaces, I should say, telecom brands, the MTN, the Vodacoms, and all those. They consistently feature in the top brands, most admired, most valuable. And the reason being that those brands are catalyst brands. They're enabler brands. They enable you to communicate, they enable you to transact, they enable you to really do well. If you look at Kenya, for example, with M-Pesa, which comes from Safaricom. M-Pesa was an enabler which took unbanked people in Kenya from 5% to 70% in a space of 5 years.
But that's the brand value of M-Pesa in Kenya. M-Pesa comes to South Africa and is absolutely nowhere. It's not worthless, but it's practically worthless in South Africa. Nedbank has failed to get South Africans to subscribe to M-Pesa. In the same way as Sasol, which is number 2 on your list, is a huge South African innovation, came out of the Industrial Development Corporation, using Fischer-Tropsch technology to turn coal into fuel, and this technology has been exported around the world. Brilliant South African innovation, the second most valuable brand, but it's only in South Africa. Nobody out of South Africa really knows or cares about Sasol.
Well, I mean, the valuation right now is really for South African brands. I think what Sasol has also done is to move from being just a corporate brand to a commercial brand. As you can see, they spend a lot of time trying to explain with some of their communication what Sasol does to the everyday South African, with their garages and all those, to try and tangibilize the brand. I think they've done amazing work in doing that. And I just want to talk to M-Pesa, why not? Perhaps it didn't succeed in South Africa. Now, when M-Pesa came to South Africa, where it was a very successful mobile money transfer in Kenya, which didn't have as developed the banking industry as South Africa has. Now, in South Africa, everybody's got a credit card. We pay with plastic. There's an ATM every corner. So if you look at the ability of M-Pesa, if you will, a technology like that to be an enabler in South Africa, it would have been a marginal or an additional. We were already transacting.
Completely. I mean, South Africa's 5 biggest banks are all in the top 10 in terms of brand valuation. We value our banks, we value our cell phone providers very, very highly indeed. When one looks at this list of the top 50 brands, I put it to you, to coin another South African phrase, I put it to you that we have not seen any substantial innovation in the last 20 years. MTN and Vodacom, positions number 1 and 3, came into existence 20 years ago. Everything else in the top 50 brands on this list are old school, historical South African brands. My concern is we're not innovating nearly enough and regularly enough to have the next generation's MTN and Vodacoms.
I tell you, to build a great brand doesn't take 5 years or 20 years. It takes a long time to build a great brand. You look at some of the greatest ones, like Coca-Cola from the 1886, the Marlboros from the 1800s. It takes that long to build a brand. But what I want to say about this list, which is I guess another important thing, is that many of the brands, all the brands in the top 50 are brands which are listed. Now, if you look at one of the greatest brands in South Africa or from South Africa, which is perhaps the last 20, 21, 2 years, is Nando's. It's not a listed brand, but it's perhaps one of the most global restaurant brands, South Africa's most global retail brands, if you will, / restaurant brand in the world. But I put it to you that we have innovated quite a bit. You know, we've had the discoveries of the world.
Discovery is a rare beast, and you say you don't build brands for 20 years. Discovery is a case in point where you do. Discovery is less than 20 years old. Adrian Gore came out of Liberty, went to the RMB Group and said, I'd like some capital, please, to start a health insurance business. I believe the future is about private healthcare. The guys at First Rand agreed with him, gave him the money, and the history will be written one day. Discovery is rare. African Bank also is rare in that it is on this list. But for how much longer? Considering the huge erosion we've seen in the value, the share price value, the market capitalization of African Bank over the last 18 months, where the share price has gone from 40 Rand down to the 7 Rand level, surely the brand is going to be tarnished quite significantly in the months ahead.
You don't only have to be new or innovate a new brand, but you also have to innovate within that new brand. So I think you can see a lot of the great brands which stay there are consistently innovating within that primary innovation. I think South Africa in particular, when you look at the list of the top 100 most valuable brands in Africa, you'll notice that South Africa has got 72% of those, 26% of them come from Nigeria and 2% come from Kenya. South Africa has got a good base to build on. But the problem that we have and that we may face, as you say, with African Bank and all those, is to understand that to build a great brand is not something that you do once, it's something that you do every day. And also you have to keep pace with your consumers. You know, I love something that somebody once said. He says, we want to get ahead to the future so that when our consumers arrive there, we will be waiting for them.
Will you be surprised to see African Bank in your top 50 this time next year?
Well, it depends what they do with the business. Because now remember, the most valuable brands list depends on the two primary things. It depends on the financial listing, and it also depends on the consumer rating. So if the consumers do not continue to support the brand and the business does not perform, then you will not see it on the list.
Why is Hansa Pilsner worth more than the brand value of the company that brews it? S.A.B. Miller sits in position number 31. Hansa Pilsner sits in position number 22. Is that all courtesy of a man called Vuyo?
Vuyo was a great asset, I think, for Hansa. But I think the other important to remember is that Hansa is a brand on its own. And remember, and SAB, we don't sell SAB. SAB is the company.
Correct.
It's a company.
But Hansa has got a more valuable brand than Castle Lager, which that blows my mind.
You know, that's how these things go, particularly when you look at the value that consumers themselves attach to the brand. The premium of the brand enables the brand to get that value.
And ultimately, that's all that matters, what you think of brands. That was Thebe Ikalafeng, the chairman of Brand Finance Africa. Thank you for watching. Thank you to Thebe Ikalafeng for coming in. And we'll be more tomorrow. Until then, bye-bye.